Hello and welcome to another episode of the BSN podcast. Today is Wednesday, August 17th. Hope everybody's having a good day so far. Today and had a good rest of their day yesterday. It is in fact Wednesday, August 17th, coming off another big night last night in the world of baseball. You had the Yankees and the Mets on. Not good for either. Yankees lose 3-1. Can't get anything going offensively. Mets lose 5-0, so they can't get anything going offensively either. So a packed night, a lot of baseball, but not much scoring, and obviously no winning. So a tough night for both the Yankees and the Mets as they will look to bounce back today. Yankees will look to salvage the final game of this three-game set and try to turn this homestand around, because if you get swept by the Rays at home, you got 4 against Toronto coming up. You're looking at this homestand now, and you're just looking, to come out of this homestand alive in a way, because then you got to go play up against the Mets, next Monday and Tuesday, and you're going to have to face DeGrom and Scherzer in those 2 games. So it's not looking good right now for the Yankees. They continue to struggle, continue to lose, continue to not score. Again last night, 1 run. That is now 1 run in the last 27 innings of baseball. It took them 22 1/3 innings to finally score. So a really tough night last night for the Yankees. We'll get into it, talk about it as well. Same thing with the Mets. But look, this is the beauty of the Mets. And if you're a Met fan, this is where you should feel okay about these 2 losses. You shouldn't feel happy about it, but you should feel, it's not panic mode, because you're going to have DeGrom and Scherzer the next 2 games. So, you're going to know you have the pitching advantage the next 2. You should win the next 2, and you split the series. It's not ideal, but you very well can still split. So that's the advantage that the Mets have over any other team in baseball, is that they have 2 elite pitchers. And in 4-game sets, in playoff series, no matter how it starts, they're going to have 2 elite pitchers that can pitch and help you out and really turn a series around. So we'll see if the Mets can do that. Topics for today's podcast, going to be a big baseball day. A lot of news coming out of the Yankee land as long as Met land. So we're going to start off with the Yankees' expected roster moves. After last night's loss, I think also accumulation of this rough stretch, it looks like the Yankees are going to make a couple roster moves. There's rumors out there they're going to place Clay Holmes on the IL. Marinaccio is going to get a call up. There's also rumors about Oswaldo Cabrera being called up, along with Estevan Florial. So it looks as if the Yankees are in a spot where they are looking to. It looks like they're in a spot where they're trying to bring up young talent, kind of infuse put energy into this team. Bring up some speed, bring up guys that want to play, kind of bring some energy, because there needs to be energy in the clubhouse. So it looks like that's what the Yankees are doing. They're going to place Clay Holmes on the IL. But what are the other 2 moves? Are they going to DFA somebody? Are they going to option Castro? DJ LeMahieu doesn't look like he's going to be on the IL. So what are the Yankees going to do? I also want to get into some of that with the just the stats, what they can bring to the table, both Florial and Cabrera, and talk about all that good stuff. We're also going to get into the Mets calling up Brett Baty, number 2 prospect, so Met fans get what they want. Number 2 overall prospect in the Mets organization. Francisco Alvarez obviously being number 1. Mets calling up their number 2 prospect, third baseman. Could do a little bit of everything. Also another guy where Guillorme goes on the IL, Carrasco goes on the IL, you call up another catcher, Nito goes down. So kind of Mets all of a sudden hit with some injuries. Got to bring some guys up. Brett Baty will get the call up. And another guy, Mets, 2-game losing streak, another guy that can come up. Put a little bit more energy into this team, get them back to their winning ways. So we'll get into that. And we'll also finish things off with the New York Sports Update. Yankees tonight against the Rays, trying to close out, salvage a 3-game set. You can't get swept. Getting swept at home would be terrible. So look to salvage the final game of the 3-game set and get ready for Toronto starting tomorrow for a 4-game set. Mets will look to avoid the series loss today in the 3rd game of a 4-game set in Atlanta. So, a lot to get to today on the broadcast here. With all that being said, this is the BSN podcast, and let's get into it. So, another brutal loss last night for the New York Yankees as they lose 3-1. Rays put up 3 runs in the 1st inning. There was no looking back. Yankees obviously put up 1 in the 5th thanks to a Miguel Andujar, thanks to an E5 on Yandy Diaz, or an I believe it was an E3 or whatever it was, E3, E5, whatever it was, on Yandy Diaz. or whoever was on, they scored. Yankees won put up a run, and that was kind of it. So it's embarrassing. It really is. It's tough to watch. I'm sitting there watching that game. It's embarrassing. They're not scoring runs. They're not putting up any. They're not hitting with runners in scoring position. Anytime they have an opportunity, they're not doing anything. So it's a really, really tough loss again for the Yankees. They lose again 3-1, and that's been the story of it, right? The pitcher, Nestor Cortes did well. He threw 7 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, 3 Ks, 97 pitches, 66 strikes. His ERA now goes up a little bit to 2.67, now to 2.74. But he had a good outing. Other than the one swing of the bat by Arozarena to make it a 3-0 game in the first inning, he had a good outing. He did what he needed to do. When you have an offense that's not scoring, when you have an offense that's only putting up 1 or none runs a night or no runs at all, you can't go out there and put up a good performance. So you look at Nestor Cortes, he pitched well. It's the 3 runs. Once you saw Arozarena have that 3-run homer, you knew the game was over. You knew it was over. You knew it was going to be a long night, and you kind of just got the feeling like this is going to be, it might turn into a night where it's a 10-0 beatdown if Nestor Cortes can't find his stuff and can't find his fastball and his all that stuff. He was able to find it and did his job for 7 innings. When you have an offense that can't score, if the Yankees put up 1 run last night, that game's going extra innings. So that's how bad it is. That's how bad it's gotten. That's how poor it's gotten when you're talking about this offense. Pitchers almost have to be automatic. Garrett Cole lets up no runs his last 2 outings. Yankees lose because they can't score. So it continues last night yet again. And then you hear the reports about Estevan Florial getting called up midway through the game. Boone not really confirms it, but Boone hint towards, a couple moves happening today. And look, I've said this oftentimes. Before I really get into the moves and get into the different possibilities of what the Yankees can do with their roster, obviously still you're able to make moves now, just no trades after the trade deadline. So your only way of getting help is from down below in the minors, or if you got a guy in the IL that's, coming back like a Stanton or hopefully Carpenter will come back by October, with the story that he's had this year. Just been a great story for that guy. Tough to see him go down. I've said this entire year, right? There's been a lot of people throughout the past couple weeks, really over the past couple months, really even dating back prior to the All-Star break when we had a little bit of that struggle. People wanted to see Peraza get called up. Oswald Peraza, the shortstop, one of the top prospects in our organization, a guy that has a lot of high expectations, a guy that the Yankees definitely see in their future, really a guy that they felt they didn't want to get rid of at the deadline. There was rumors that the Luis Castillo deal involved Peraza. So a guy there, a lot of people wanted him to call up. And I want to say this, I've never been anti-calling players up. I think it's a great idea. I like the idea of calling guys up because it gives them an opportunity, number one. You get to see what, you kind of see what you got in the guy, whether that's, Cabrera, Peraza, Florial, who's been called up already a couple times. He's played 16 games in his career dating over across the past 3 seasons, 2020, 2021, and then this year. So he's played a couple games already with the Yankees, already had a little bit of MLB experience, not much. But I've never been anti-call guys up. I've just, people say, DFA Fleff or bench Fleff and call Peraza. I don't like that idea. I know Fleff's defense has been finicky, but I think people have kind of hated on Fleff a little bit too much. I think people, look at the home runs. Well, he's not a power hitter. You can look at the home runs and say, oh, well, it's home runs. Yeah, but he's not a power hitter. He's not a high on base size. He's going to get hits. He's pretty good runners in scoring position. That's what he brings to the table. He's a stopgap. He's not a guy that's going to be an all-star and going to be making plays all over the place. He won Gold Glove at third base, not at shortstop. So that's where I get a little bit frustrated when people say, oh, bring up Peraza, bench IKF. But I never have an issue, and I don't have an issue now, and I actually like the idea of bringing up young talent from down below because that can truly give a boost to a roster. Number one, young guys, they're going to be excited. They're going to be pumped up anytime. Whether you're in a rough stretch or in a hot stretch, anytime they come up, it's a dream come true for a lot of these guys. And they're going to be pumped up. They're going to be amped. They're going to be excited. So when you see that, that can just put juice into a locker room right now that you can even see their faces in the dugout. It's dead. There is no energy. Watching the game, there is no energy in the ballpark, no energy in the dugout, probably no energy in the locker room, and it's clear the way they're playing. So I like the idea of the New York Yankees bringing up a couple prospects, bringing up guys with speed, bringing up guys that are young, bringing up guys that are going to bring energy into a roster. Now, it's going to be a lot more pressure on these guys, a Cabrera, a Florial, to come up and do their job and come up and make an impact because Yankees are struggling. If the Yankees are hot and they're playing their best baseball and they call up a prospect due to an injury, it's not going to be much pressure. Now there's going to be a lot of pressure because the fans, we kind of expect this to help the team in a way. My big thing, too, with prospects is you don't want to rush them. Now, Oswaldo Cabrera seems like he's ready. He's had a very good season at AAA. Same thing with Florial. Cabrera this season started up in the lower levels, climbed his way up. AAA now has played the majority of the season at AAA, and since returning from a shoulder injury has been phenomenal. So I like the idea. Now, you hear reports last night about Clay Holmes going to the IL. So it looks as if the Yankees are going to bring up Marinaccio, which I like that idea because I hated when they brought him down. I don't think it was fair. Marinaccio, I read you this stat a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to read it again. Since April, Marinaccio has given up 1 run in 22 2/3 innings. So he's been phenomenal. He's been one of the Yankees' best relievers. Since going down to Scranton, I think he's only allowed 1 run, so he's continued his dominance in the minor leagues. He's a guy that looks like will get called up with Clay Holmes going on the IL. So now you're going to bring up Florial, and you hear reports about Oswaldo Cabrera coming up. So you're going to get Marinaccio, Florial, and Cabrera coming up. Now, that's where the question comes of where the next 3 going to come from. Now, Castro, it doesn't look like the Yankees are going to put LeMahieu on the IL. Boone said they're hopeful, they're optimistic he could be back in the lineup tomorrow. He said that last night's press conference, so that means today. There's that possibility. If he comes, to the stadium today and he's still not feeling 100%, do the Yankees just say, look, put you on the IL, open up a roster spot? Do they say that, or do they go ahead and say, look, give you a couple more days rest? Because if you put LeMahieu on the IL, I guess you could always make it retroactive to a couple days prior, whatever they do, but it would be interesting to see how that plays out. They got to make a decision because it's been, 3 days now? They have to make a decision on what they're going to do with LeMahieu. Castro and Gonzalez are 2 guys that are probably going to be the most likely to get moved. Now, Castro's options. You could option Castro, which is a possibility. They do that. You also have to, then you would have to DFA somebody. So do you DFA Marwin Gonzalez, who hasn't really played much this year? We brought him in to be a depth piece, a utility guy. And even when he's gotten his opportunities, Michael Kay said yesterday on the broadcast, he's like, he's in 0 for 22. So a guy that really hasn't done much. So could he be a guy that gets DFA'd? Now, could a guy like Aaron Hicks be DFA'd? I don't foresee that happening. I would love for that to happen. I just don't see it. So Yankees are going to need to find ways to make another move. I think the obvious one is probably optioning Castro and then maybe putting LeMahieu on the IL, or optioning Castro and DFA, or optioning Castro and DFAing a Marwin Gonzalez or somebody like that. Because Oswaldo Cabrera can play multiple. He could play a little bit of infield. He could play some outfield. He could do a little bit of everything. So that would almost be replacing Marwin Gonzalez in a way, who really hasn't done much this year. He hasn't been bad. I mean, he really hasn't played much, and even when he got an opportunity, he hasn't done much. So that's kind of really been the story of Marwin Gonzalez. Do the Yankees do that? Either way, it's interesting because they're going to have to find a way to bring up 3 guys, and right now we only know of 1 roster opening up. 1 roster spot. Even if they put LeMahieu on the IL, they're going to need to option somebody else. I'd assume that would be Castro. So we'll see how it all plays out. We'll see what they do, but I have no issue with it. So let me read you Florial and Oswaldo Cabrera's stats. And I just want to show you how, they could definitely bring a little bit of juice to this lineup. We saw it last year with Andrew Velazquez. He was a young kid that got called up, was from the Bronx, got called up, was living a dream, and did really well. And he's a guy that kind of put a little bit of juice and energy into the locker room. Could that be the case? We'll see. I mean, this is the only way you can get better after the trade deadline. You can't make any trades. You can only DFA guys or bring guys up. So that's the only way you can improve or change your roster at this moment. All right, so we all know that Estevan Florial has had some time already in the MLB. 2020, he played 1 game. He got a hit. So he batted .333 in 2020. 2021, he batted like .300. This year, I don't think he's gotten a hit yet this year in the couple games that he's played. So in his MLB career, he's played 16 games, batting average of .206, on base percentage of .325, slugging of .353, and his OPS is .678. Now you look at his other stuff. He's had 7 hits, 1 home run, 2 RBIs, 3 runs scored. That's in his 16 games played over the past 3 years in the MLB. So he's gotten called up a little bit. You see Florial's gotten called up a lot in games where they would have, in a doubleheader game where they needed a 27th man. He was kind of that guy a lot of times. So you look at his minor league stats this year from Florial, and he's raking. He's having a phenomenal season. He's actually currently really hot. So bringing up a guy who's hot, similar to what you would do in Cabrera. Batting average of 286, on base percentage of 386, slugging percentage of 490. He's got an OPS of 858. So it shows you with Florial, he's been dominant in the minor leagues. He's just been tough to kind of translate that into the major leagues. And a lot of people have already wanted to write Florial off and say, oh, he's not good anymore. We've already seen this. I don't think that's fair. He's played 16 games in the MLB. It hasn't really been a consistent 16 games either. It's 16 games over the course of 3 seasons. And a lot of times it's one game here and there because he's getting called up for a 27th man or maybe an injury. So that's a possibility there of why he's had why he hasn't fully lived up to expectations and why he has a career batting average of 206 in the major leagues and an OPS of 678. But his playing times has been scattered, and I've always said that. It's tough to gauge a prospect, gauge a young player when he's coming up, going down, coming up, going down, coming up, going down. He's get one game he gets 3 at bats, goes back down. Gets 3 at bats, goes back down. You can't gauge a guy. Give a guy a solid 2 to 3 weeks to a month of solid at bats, playing time at the MLB level, and then you can really gauge them. 16 games over 3 years, it's tough to gauge. So I don't like when people say write him off. I'm not saying Florial is going to be the future in the outfield. I'm just saying you don't want to write him off just yet. I don't mind them bringing him up. He also has some MLB experience already. A little bit, not a ton, but he has a little bit. So he has 101 hits, 14 homers, 39 RBIs, and 62 runs scored as well this season in the minor leagues. That's 89 games played. So that's all this year, and he's been up in AAA. Started last year a little bit in AA at Somerset, absolutely raked, and then they brought him back down. Another guy just popped in my head, Andujar. Could they option him? He had a really rough day yesterday, swinging at one pitch he swung that was above his head. So the Yankees definitely have some possibilities of who they want to option. I'd probably say Castro is most likely, Andujar, or DFA Marwin. You could option Castro and Andujar and just bring up Cabrera, and they could just do that. That'd probably be the most likely. But we'll see. So that's what Florial brings. Defensively, very good. Outfielder, Hicks's recent struggles. Bader's still on the IL, right? In the walking boot. So who knows when he's going to come back. It makes sense to bring up a guy like a Florial, some outfield assistance. Same thing with Cabrera. But Cabrera could be a little bit more flexible. He could also play a little bit of infield. He could play a little bit of short. He could play some outfield. He was in right field, I think, last night for Scranton's game. So a guy, too, that can play a little bit of everything. With Peraza kind of holding down shortstop, he's kind of been all over the field. So a little bit of more of a utility guy you get in Oswaldo Cabrera. So here's what Cabrera has done this season in AAA. Batting average of 262, on base percentage of 340, slugging of 492, OPS of 832. He's had 48 hits, 8 home runs, 29 RBIs, and he's had 29 runs scored. And I also wanted to read you another stat here. So since returning from a shoulder injury on July 12th, the number 11 prospect, Oswaldo Cabrera, he's 31 for 92. That's batting 337 with 7 homers, 23 RBIs, and 11 walks in 24 games. And he enters the week with an 18-game on-base percentage. So right now, he's getting on base at a high clip. So that's why you see that on-base percentage of 340 all the way up there. He's getting on base at a high clip. He's batting 337 since coming off the injury, which happened on July 12th. So really, you look at his numbers since July 12th, the past month, he's been absolutely dominating. And I've always said that about prospects. If you want to bring up prospects, bring them up at the right time. You don't want to, sometimes you could bring them up. They did that Luis Heel where he struggles a little bit in the minor leagues, and then they bring him up, and he's really good. Sometimes, it's tough to stay motivated and still put up good performances in the minor leagues. But when you get a minor leaguer that's hot and in his groove, that's, boom, you put them in the MLB, that's where they can really have success. If they struggle in the minors, you bring them up, sometimes they do have success as well. It really doesn't matter much. Because it's such a big hop, it's such a big jump. Look at Jared Kelenic. The guy rakes in AAA, goes up to the MLB, and does nothing. So Oswaldo Cabrera brings a lot to the table there too, a little bit of flexibility, 47 games played this season. So Florial, Cabrera are definitely there. Now, like I said, I think a lot of people, want to see Peraza up. My big thing with Peraza is obviously they don't feel he's ready, or they just don't feel that they want to bring him up yet, and you don't want to rush him, and that's the big thing. The last thing you want to do is rush a guy, mess him all up, and then you don't have him for many more years to come. So that's the big thing. So, look, I like the idea of this, and I think this is a good idea for the Yankees. I think this is smart to bring up young talent, bring up guys that can put a little bit of energy into this roster, bring up guys that are going to truly just, fast, quick, high energy, excited, need a boost in the locker room. Because right now, what you're seeing is a lot of faces in that infield, a lot of faces in the outfield, a lot of faces in the dugout that just are bad. There's no smiling, there's no looseness. When this Yankee team was playing at a high level, they were smiling, they were and I guess that's just stereotypical. I mean, it's going to happen. When you're losing, you're going to be angry. When you're winning, you're going to be happy. But it just doesn't feel like they're playing loose, and they're playing tense. And I mean, they mentioned on the broadcast, guys maybe gripping the bat a little bit tighter right now. The offense not doing anything. There's more pressure. I mean, even Judge, maybe he's trying to push a little bit too much, or even he's trying to, do a little bit too much right now, just because of the fact that there's nobody else in this lineup right now that really is doing much. And I don't want to take away from, Benintendi. He had a good night last night with the triple and the single and all that stuff. But there's a lot of holes in this lineup. So I like the idea. I think it's smart for the Yankees to bring these guys up. They need a boost. I mean, if this doesn't work, and look, we'll see. I mean, we'll see how this all plays out, whether or not, this works or doesn't work. I just think it's, it can't hurt. It can't hurt, because right now what you're doing is 1 run in 27 innings. The way you're playing, it can't get much worse. It really can't. And you're wasting, and that's the most frustrating part, I think. It's not so much that it's the fact that we're wasting good performances from our starting pitching. Cole gave you back-to-back shutout performances, and you lose both games because you can't score. Nasty Nestor last night, after a rough first inning, bounced back, had a really solid outing, can't get the job done. Tyone even on Sunday night. He did well. I mean, other than the Devers 2-run homers was the main thing that really hurt him. One swing of the bat, he had a good outing. Considering the past couple outings he's had, Yankees can't support him. That's the frustrating part, is this pitching staff recently has been much better, and the bullpen's been struggling, and the bats have been off. So that's the frustrating part, is the fact that you're wasting good performances from your starting pitching. It's tough, because when you see an outing from Cole where he lets up 6 runs, and if you score 5 that game, well, your offense on, when you get good outings from your pitching, you have to take advantage of it. You have to. I mean, when your starting pitcher gives you 6 innings of shutout baseball, like Garrett Cole did on Monday night, there's no excuse to lose that game. No excuse. Or he's not shutout. He allowed 1 run. No excuse. Last night, 3 runs in the first inning. You should be able to chip away and bounce back from that. They don't. They only had a 1 in the 5th, and it was on an error that scored Benintendi, and that was it. I mean, it's got to be better. It has to be, and I will continue to say it. Bring up these it can't get much worse. So you can only get better bringing up these prospects. I look at it that way. You can't get much worse. That's how I see it. Because right now you're looking at a team that scored 1 run in the past 27 innings. A team that since the All-Star break currently holds the worst record in baseball since the All-Star break, and once had the best record in baseball. And you now look at it, they're way below. They're below the Astros now. They're 4th in baseball with the best, in terms of record. I mean, it's not good. It is not good at all. And you have to just thank the baseball gods that teams behind them really haven't taken advantage of it, or else they might be in a division race right now that's only 5 or 4 games instead of 9 games. So, but, we'll see if they give a boost. We'll see what the Yankees do. Again, they could option Castro. I know they like Castro because he's fast, he's quick, he brings something defensively. I understand that, but I don't know. He's not a great bat. He's good on the bases. I know that. I know the Yankees like him for that, but I don't know. The Yankees right now stand at 72-45, 9 games up, and like I mentioned earlier, it's not like they're joining a team, these Cabrera and Florial. It's not like they're joining a team that's 9 games up and playing their best baseball. They're joining a team that's, struggling, and there's going to be pressure on them. There is. There's going to be pressure on Florial and Cabrera to come through. Because if they struggle and they can't do anything, well, then you're like, all right, we went to the farm system, that didn't work. We DFA'd this guy, or we got rid of this guy, or we brought up this guy, it's not working, and then you you find yourself in a tough spot. And I understand there's a couple guys on the IL, so you'll get healthier with Carpenter, and, you'll get healthier with, Stanton coming back, but, right now, for the time being, those guys aren't back, so you need to find a way to improve this team, and, obviously with the trade deadline pass, can't do any of that, so. 9 games up, and they're lucky. The Yankees are lucky that this lead has not dwindled to a 6 or a 5 or a 4 game lead in the division. The Rays have been hot recently. They are 6-4 in their last 10. They're currently on a 4-game win streak. And the Blue Jays continue to lose. They're 2-8 in their last 10, 3-game losing streak. So it looks like the Rays now are more in the driver's seat for a wild card spot with the way they're playing right now on a 4-game win streak. So it's bad. It's tough to watch. And I always say that, like, when I was talking earlier in the year, when you were watching the Yankees, you could feel a different energy around the team. Like, there was a different vibe. And it was just, you didn't know if it was just the way they were playing or if it was maybe the new additions or whatever it was. But there was a different vibe around the team, just a different energy, even in the ballpark. Now, and I said that, like, I think I said this back in, like, May or June. Like, watching games last year of the Yankees, 2021, was like, you didn't, like, earlier in the year with the Yankees, you looked forward to watching them. Like, it's going to be exciting. You're going to see good baseball, pitching, bullpen, hitting, defense, all that stuff. Last year, you didn't see that. Last year, it was like, Yankees are on tonight. Let's watch 9 innings of Ruth Neto Odor striking out 3 times. Now, it's like the same thing again. It's the 2021 Yankees all over again, where they're not hitting. They're scoring 1 or 2 runs a night. There's no energy in the stadium. There's nothing to cheer about because they're not even doing anything. I mean, they barely got runners on last night. I mean, geez, they had 4 hits. I mean, it's not even like, the night before they did have 7 hits, but it's not like right now, it's not even like their runners in scoring position is an issue. But there's games where they're not even hitting, where they're not even getting runners on. Last night's an example. 3 left on base. I mean, they barely hit. So, it's tough to watch. Can't get much worse. So, hopefully, whatever the Yankees decide to do, Marinaccio seems like he's going to get called up because Clay Holmes is going to go to the IL. He's got some back issues, although I think a little bit is, too, to try to just give him a little bit of rest because he's been going through a really tough stretch where he's just blowing games left and right. So, I think this is a little bit of the Yankees saying, look, we're going to give you some rest, mentally get back into it, reset, and get ready for the postseason. I think that's what the Yankees are doing here. So, we'll see how it all plays out, but definitely some rumored and expected roster moves coming up later on in the day here with the Yankees and whatever they decide to do. It will be intriguing. I think, we know who's going to get brought up, but it will be intriguing of who they send down. Is it Andujar? Is it LeCastro? Or do they keep Andujar up, send LeCastro down? Do they DFA somebody like a Marwin Gonzalez? It will be interesting to see. I would assume that they're just going to go the option route, an option like LeCastro and Andujar. But it would be interesting to see if they do DFA somebody. And, it would be interesting. It definitely would be. So, anyway, that's what I got for the Yankees' rumored roster moves. Now we're going to get into the Mets calling up Brett Baty, their number 2 prospect. So, a lot of prospects today for Yankees and Mets teams, 2 teams that, I don't think anybody's really saw this coming. And the New York Mets call up Brett Baty, their number 2 overall prospect from AAA. He's only played 6 games in AAA. It's funny because he got called up to AAA on August 8th. And it shows you how excited, how pumped up the Mets are for him. They called him up on August 8th to AAA. It's August 17th, and now yesterday he got the call up to the MLB. So it looks like he'll join the team in Atlanta. He wasn't in the lineup last night. It's not official, so it'll probably become official today. But with them sending Nito to the IL, Carrasco to the IL, and Luis Guillorme to the IL, it opens up a bunch of roster spots. Some pitchers coming up, a different Alvarez, RJ Alvarez, I think his name was, came up. Martin Perez came up, the catcher. So they made a couple of roster moves already with prospects. But the big one is Brett Baty, number 2 overall prospect in the Mets organization, is getting called up. A guy that, third base, can do a little bit of everything. Very good fielding, very good hitting. And Met fans get what they want. I think a lot of Met fans have been wanting the Mets to call up a prospect for a very long time. This goes all the way back to, the catching struggles and bringing up Francisco Alvarez to, a bunch of stuff. The possibility of maybe not doing much at the trade deadline so you can bring up, a prospect or bring up another bat. We were all talking around the trade deadline where what are the Mets going to do? Are they going to bring up a bat via trade? Or are they going to bring up a bat via, the farm system? They need a bat, and they decided to go out and make a couple small moves, bringing in Naquin, Vogelback, and Ruff, who have all been very good. Vogelback's been amazing. He's turning into a fan favorite. He's been phenomenal. And unlike the Yankees, it's not time to panic. This isn't a panic move for the Mets. This is a move, though, that shows that they got some injuries. They need another bat. They need another kind of guy in this lineup to give them a little bit more of a boost. That's what you're going to get in a prospect. It's not time to panic for the Mets. Yes, you've been outscored in the 2 games against Atlanta 18-1. I understand that. You just got shut out last night and all that stuff, and now your lead is now back down to 3.5 games, so it's much closer now. But look, the Braves are hot. Braves are a hot team. Braves are on an 8-game win streak. They're 8-2 in their last 10. So they're a hot team right now. So you are running into a hot Braves team. I wouldn't necessarily say this is the Mets getting cold, the Mets starting to struggle. I would just say that this is kind of a sign of, a couple injuries, maybe a little bit. It's not even a slump because they just got off of such a hot stretch. They lost 2 games. It's not time to panic. You got Max Scherzer going tonight. You got Jacob deGrom going tomorrow. So you have the pitching advantage the next 2 days. You should win those next 2 games. You split the series. You move on. You go to Philly. You play the Phillies, who you just beat them over the weekend. Not time to panic. But you do have some injuries. And I've always said this, and I think a lot of Met fans have said this entire year. Not a lack of talent on the Mets roster. They got the talent. They got the pitching. They got the closer. Edwin Diaz has been phenomenal this year. Possibility of him receiving some MVP votes. They got all that. Their bullpen outside of Diaz is a little questionable, but for the most part, I think, their bullpen's a little questionable, but you have Edwin Diaz. You have a closer who you can just rely on so much. Your starting rotation's phenomenal. I talked a little bit about it yesterday when I was talking about Walker Buehler and the Dodgers. And we all know what the lineup brings to the table. Francisco Lindor's back to being Francisco Lindor. Vogelback's been phenomenal. Pete Alonso up there in the league lead with the RBIs. Starling Marte, defensively, offensively, they've been phenomenal this year. Jeff McNeil leading the team in batting average. The other day had a 4-for-4 night. I believe that was on Monday. So it's not time to panic. And I've always said that. Not a lack of talent. Now with the Yankees, if they're going to lose a World Series or not make it to the World Series or have an early exit in the playoffs, it's going to be because of a lack of hitting and a lack of talent. That's what I believe. The Mets, it's not going to be because of that. If the Mets lose or have an early exit in the postseason, it's going to be because of injuries, and specifically an injury to their pitching rotation, which you hope never happens, but if Jacob deGrom or Max Scherzer were to ever go down again, that would cause them to miss out on an opportunity to win a World Series. Because the Mets have all the chips in place. They have all of them. Billy Epler, Steve Cohen, the Mets front office have done a phenomenal job at building this team up and getting this team into a form where they're one of the best teams in all baseball and probably, I think, the second best team in the National League, only behind the LA Dodgers, who are just phenomenal, 80-win team and don't seem to show any signs of slowing down. 80-35 on the season. So they're a team that first 80 wins. Mets stand at 75-42, so they very well might be behind them for the second team to 80 wins, either them or the Astros, who are 75 as well and 43. So that's my thing with the Mets. Injuries are going to slow them down. And you start to see now, the injuries right now, Cookie Carrasco's a tough one because he's been much better recently. Earlier in the year, Cookie Carrasco was one of those guys that really struggled and he struggled and I shouldn't say he struggled because I don't think that's a fair assessment. But he didn't struggle. He would have a good outing and he would really struggle. Have a good outing, bad outing. He'd have like 3 really good outings and then he'd have an outing where he'd go like 3 innings allowing 6 runs. Over the past month, really since the All-Star break, it's been good outing after good outing after good outing after good outing. And he hasn't really had that really bad outing where you get 3 good outings and you get a really bad outing. He's had been much more consistent. So it's tough to see him go down. But Tomas Nido, I know he's the preferred catcher over James McCann, who can't hit. The guy has been awful. I was wrong about that move. I thought that was going to be a very good move. That was not the case. He's been terrible with the Mets. And then with Luis Guillorme going down, who, his defense has been phenomenal. Offense has been good as well. That's a tough blow. Batting .283 with a .355 on base percentage this year, 86 games played, has been a guy that brings a lot to the table defensively. Really good. So to see him go down is definitely a little bit tough. But the other, also Carrasco, Tomas Nido, it's tough to see him go down, but it's not the end of the world. I think, it's bigger blows, Guillorme and Carrasco just because of what Carrasco means to the rotation, just because of what Guillorme means defensively. Now, Jeff McNeil and Francisco Lindor is very good defensively as well. So it's not like Guillorme's your only defensive guy. But when you compare him to like an Eduardo Escobar defensively, Guillorme, definitely I think is the preferred player. So they call it Brett Baty. And like I said, Brett Baty is the guy that they're clearly high on because they called him up to AAA on August 8th. It is now August 17th. He's going to be playing in the MLB. So he's had 6 games in AAA. And a lot of times you see organizations do this where they will call a guy up to a AAA. They'll see what they can do in a couple games, and then they'll be like, all right, you're ready. Nationals did it with C.J. Abrams. Now, he's already had some MLB experience, so it's a little bit different. But they once they got him over from San Diego in the trade, they put him up in AAA, dominated the couple games that he played there. They're like, all right, you're ready. Come up. Let's play in the big leagues. He had a hit last night, I believe, in the 10th inning. It was his first hit as a national, so all that stuff. But now you're seeing that with Brett Baty. You see teams do this oftentimes where call a guy up to AAA. Sometimes it's because of injury, too, where you get an injury and it's just sudden where they got to, call up a guy. But you call a guy up to AAA, and 8 days later, he's getting the call to the MLB. And he's raked in AAA. In the 6 games that he has played, he has done his job. He has dominated, and he has been one of the better players in that lineup. 364 batting average, 462 on base percentage, a slugging percentage of 364, an OPS of 826. He's got 8 hits in 6 games. No homers yet, but that's 6 games. No need to worry about that. 1 RBI, 3 runs scored. So in 6 games, he's at 8 hits. He's batting 364 and a base percentage of 462. So Mets obviously feel like, look, he's only been up for 6 games. He got called up on August 8th. He's had 22 at-bats, but he's ready to go. And I agree with the Mets on this one, right? You need a guy to, give a little bit of a spark. Defensively, he's very good. Can play third base. He's been in the conversations for a long time. And I think for a Met team, too, where you hear all the rumors, and I think this is a little bit why the Mets maybe didn't go after a bunch of big names at the trade deadline, is because they knew what they had in their farm system, and if injuries or if they needed another bat, they have it in their farm system, whether that's a Francisco Alvarez, whether it's a Brett Baty, Vientos, any of those guys. All those guys have been in the conversation, and I truly believe that if it wasn't for injuries, Baty probably wouldn't have gotten called up. But look, they have an injury, they need a little bit of help. There's nothing better than when you can go to your farm system and trust the prospect that you're calling up. Brett Baty being that guy. So the number 2 overall prospect, obviously Francisco Alvarez being the number 1. I think a lot of Met fans want to see him. I just think I personally think the Mets want to see him a little bit longer in AAA because he got off to the slow start. He's been better, but Brett Baty's a guy that went up to AAA and he's just boom, raking in 22 at bats. He's got 8 hits, 1 RBI, 3 runs, 364 batting average. I mean, you don't need to see much else from Brett Baty. He's raking at AAA, so he gets the call up to the MLB. Continue to say it. The only thing that's going to hurt this Met team and stop this Met team from winning a World Series or going deep in the playoffs is injuries. That's what's going to happen. Nothing else. It's going to be injuries. That's what's going to stop this Met team from doing great things. And that's what it is because they have the talent. They got one of the best rotations in baseball. Their lineup's been phenomenal. You look at their bullpen with Edwin Diaz. Now you call up Brett Baty, who is a young player that brings a lot to the table. So this Met team, the only thing that's going to stop them is, there's some teams out there like the Yankees, it's going to be hitting and talent. Mets, that's not the case. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Because you don't want to have a possibility of your offense just going silent in the postseason. You don't want that. So, Mets call up Brett Baty. A lot of new faces coming up for the Yankees and the Mets, with the Yankees possibility of bringing up Florial and Cabrera, and obviously Marinaccio, who's already had a good amount of run in the MLB, and Brett Baty as well getting called up for the Mets with some injuries. So Mets dealing with a little bit of injuries, but the beauty of the Mets and the beauty of their team is the fact that they got Jacob deGrom going tomorrow and Max Scherzer going tonight. So you're going to have the pitching advantage the next 2 days, and that's why the Mets in any playoff series are going to have an advantage. Games 1 and 2, you have Scherzer and deGrom. So you have the advantage automatically in those two games. You get off to a 2-0 series lead, you look good. So, I say it, out of all the teams in the National League, the only team I personally see with their pitching staff, even despite, and I talked about this yesterday, Walker Buehler, even with Walker Buehler going down, that can match up closely to the Mets, is the Dodgers, just because of how many good pitchers they have. They don't have like great dominant like Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer. They just have a bunch of really good pitchers in their rotation. So that's the only team I see matching up. But that's what makes the Mets so dominant. And that's why if you're a Met fan today panicking all of a sudden because they've lost 2 straight games, they've been outscored 18-1 in 18 innings against the Braves, so you just smoked you just beat 4 games out of 5. I wouldn't panic. Now, if you get swept by the Braves and you lose badly against the Phillies over the weekend, okay, maybe there's like, all right, is this starting to get a cold stretch? But that's just, it's going to be hard. It's hard for that to happen when you have 2 pitchers in Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer. So, and we'll see what Brett Baty can do. Another guy, too. You're on a 2-game skid, so he's going to inject some energy. When Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom are out there, there's already a lot of energy. So, find a way to bounce back today and tomorrow and even up the series, and you forget about the first 2 games and you go to Philly for a 4-game set in 3 days because you have a doubleheader, and you play up against a Phillies team that's good, but you beat them a lot this year and you've had their number. Taking 2 out of 3 at Citi Field, the big comeback early in the year at Citizens Bank Park, so all that stuff. So, no reason to panic for the Mets. For the Yankees, another story. But, yeah, so that's what I got for the Yankees and Mets. A lot of prospect talk today. It's the only way now to improve your roster. And that's the one advantage of having a good farm system, is when you have the ability to improve your roster via the farm system. And we'll see how these moves play out. All right, so as for today's games in the MLB, you got the Reds, Phillies, Nationals, Cubs, Royals, Twins, Orioles, Blue Jays, Angels, Mariners, Padres, Marlins, Red Sox, Pirates, Guardians, Tigers, Cardinals, Rockies, Rangers, A's, White Sox, Astros, Brewers, Dodgers, Diamondbacks, Giants. Mets, Braves tonight. Mets come into this game 75-42. Braves come into today's game 72-46. 7:20 Eastern. You can find it on SNY. Max Scherzer, I believe it's on SNY. Max Scherzer 8-2 with a 1.93 ERA. Braves have Jake Odorizzi on the mound. He's 4-4 with an 3.80 ERA. Over under set at 7.5 for tonight's game. Yankees, Rays tonight 7:05 Eastern on Yes. Yankees looking to avoid the sweep. Possibility of a couple new faces being in the lineup. We shall see what they do. Corey Kluber, 7-7 with a 4.40 ERA, will get the ball for Tampa. Domingo Germán will get the ball for the Yankees. He's 1-2 with a 4.18 ERA. Over under set at 8. 72-45 Yankees versus the 62-53 Tampa Bay Rays. You're at home, can't get swept. You can't. It'd be bad. It'd be bad. Really bad. Especially for a team that went into the series with a home record of 41-15. So, Yankees look to avoid the sweep. As for fantasy baseball, I got 3 pitchers in my main league. Rolling with Max Scherzer, Carlos Rodon, and Tony Gonsolin. So, really looking at 3 aces rolling today. And I'm currently winning in my fantasy league 112-61. And in my other league, I am winning as well 41-37. And I've got Carlos Rodon, Michael Kopech, Eric Lauer. By the way, Tom Walker left last night's start in Atlanta due to back spasms. So he's another guy that, if he's hurt, could you see another prospect get called up? That's what I'm saying. Mets just have been nailed with the injury bug. New York sports in general. Really, I mean, you look at New York sports in general, they've been nailed with the injury bug. Jets with Zach Wilson, although they got very positive news yesterday with the successful surgery. But the Yankees get nailed every year. Mets getting nailed. I mean, it's like every team in New York, or the main one, or the big ones at least, getting nailed with injuries. As a Yankee fan, you see all these injuries with Carpenter and Stan, it stinks. And with the Jets, you see the injury of Becton. 4 days later, Wilson goes down. It's like all these injuries. And then now with the Yankees, and then with the Mets as well. Jacob deGrom earlier in the year, he's back now, but now you got Nito down, Guillorme's down, Carrasco's down. Back spasms is stuff back spasms is iffy because it could be one of those things that's lingering. It could also be one of those things that's heals quickly. So we'll see what they do there. But if Tylan Walker goes on the IL, now you're looking at 4 guys on the IL, and they're all 4 contributors. So, but yeah, so Mets are beat up a little bit right now as they look to get a boost from Beatty, and we'll see what they can do tonight, looking to even up the series in Atlanta. Or avoid the series sweep, so then tomorrow they can kind of tie up the series and leave Atlanta on a 2-game win streak. So, like I said, in my main fantasy league, I'm also winning 112-61. I think I mentioned that earlier, but I wasn't too sure if I mentioned that. So, that's what I got for today's podcast. Yankees tonight, just try to find a way to avoid the sweep. Getting swept, I don't think we've gotten swept at home at all this year. I don't think we have. You get swept at home is embarrassing. It's embarrassing. So you're going up against Kluber, which, you should be able to beat him. I mean, he's not a great pitcher, but he's solid. Former Yankee last year. It was weird knowing that Kluber was such a weird. He threw the no-hitter with the Yankees last year, and then he got hurt, and it was like the end of Corey Kluber. It was so weird. It's such a weird Yankee career last year. So. Anyway, that will do it for today's podcast. Another good podcast in the books. Yankees, Mets tonight. So looking forward to that. And as always, I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.